We've all turned up the radio to hear Brother Jimmy Lakey, from coast to coast and shore to shore. Now raise your voice. Oh, let us all Jimmy Lakey, get out of bed. Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice. Jimmy Lakey, Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey.
Well, howdy ho, neighbors. How are you? The choir is singing. They travel with me everywhere in Africa. I am live from Rwanda. You say, Jimmy, why are you live in Rwanda? Because I want to be. That's why. I get to be. I can be. I'm a grown-up mofo, and I'm going to be where I want to be. I'm here for our charity work, Rivers Promise. You see it on the hat. Maybe you can see it on the shirt. And I'm wearing the brand and hoping that you'll partner with me in any way you can to help the kids over here. Good to have you here on this Juneteenth, the 19th day of June, year of our Lord 2025, the glorious day the Lord has made. It's a glorious day here in Rwanda, starting to wind up. It's 4:02 in the evening for me, so whatever time it is for you, that can let you know the time difference. We're at 4:02 in the afternoon, and it's great to be here with you. Couple of stories we will get to. Got a great guest, a Marine that's written a book called From Trauma to Joy. Going to talk about some life experiences he picked up from other Marines and other people that served about trauma in life and how to handle that and how to turn it into joy and find joy in your life. And it's not just for people maybe with the trauma that they've hit, but it can be for people that were not in the military as well. So we'll get into all that with Michael McNamara coming up in just a few moments. Big story everywhere around the globe seems to be is the USA going to be involved with Israel in the attack or the involvement with the attacks on Iran, and it's interesting watching the news channels here on the international sites, and the hotel room has the Al Jazeera, the CNN International, they had the BBC and a couple of other things. It is amazing how they're actually using the same sound bites and the same guests. And I swear to goodness, they're repeating a lot of the stuff from yesterday. And at least globally, what they're trying to make news about, or what they're really trying to hype things up in, is that, hey, it looks like Donald Trump's coalition is really, really divided. And let me know what you hear. Sometimes I'm not getting the feeds you get, and I'm not watching it in real time. And I'm in bed long after the time that the Fox News, Jesse Waters and the Sean Hannity show. I'm in bed here, and I'm not even watching those in the morning. So let me know, do you feel like the MAGA coalition has been compromised? And do you feel like that there's a divide, or is this just wishful thinking? Now, here's the great thing about conservatives and or Republicans and or MAGA people, however you want to camp you want to put yourself in. We're pretty dang tolerant of people's having differing viewpoint. You can have a different thought on the military or different thought about, let's say, gay marriage, or you can have different thoughts about all sorts of stuff. We're a pretty tolerant group of people. And I know that there's some people that are very afraid, and we have a right to be afraid of us being in some prolonged war that really serves no purpose for America. George W. Bush and Barry Hussein Obama kept us in the quagmire of Iraq way too long. That was a disaster, and that was brought about by Republicans and Democrats. And I believe they brought that about because they were bought and paid for through their donations and through their big families by what we were warned about was the military-industrial complex. And so a lot of the folks in MAGA are afraid of that military-industrial complex, and they see Donald Trump in there. But now that Donald Trump is talking about some saber rattling, they get a little bit nervous. I would like to recommend some reading to you, if you may. Go to, if you can. I think I just had an African bug fly in my eye. That was nice. Beautiful. If my eyes watering the rest of the day, you have it. I noticed the camera. See, by the way, behind me is this main street in Rwanda. It's the same street you looked at yesterday in the show. It's just a different angle. And behind me, you can see some of the hustle and bustle of the city. A little gas station behind me. And then over here to my right is the view. My left, your right, is the view we saw yesterday of the Mikoline Hotel, which will be known as Hotel Rwanda. So again, you ever want to come here with me? Great tour guide. And if I don't like you, I'll send somebody else on a tour. But we can get you hooked up, and it's a great trip. And it could be maybe one of your bucket list items. If you have the X feed, if you have the Twitter, I would highly recommend you go and look up Victor Davis Hanson. he posted up, I think, something very phenomenal on Twitter or X that really, I think it really explains the heart of what you would say is it really explains the MAGA movement and where Trump comes from. And some people say that Trump is acting like a hawk, but he didn't campaign as a hawk. And some people say he campaigned as a dove. Actually, if you read Victor Davis Hanson, I think you'll find a different story that is absolutely, positively untrue. Donald Trump at times has been willing to use the military in a very forceful way. And he's taken out some really bad hombres if you don't remember. He's taken down some sons of guns that I think are needed to be taken down. He's done some preemptive strikes, and you need to read it. And people maybe have misunderstood who Trump is, and Victor Davis Hanson lays it all on the line. Let me share a little bit of it with you, but you can find it on X. You'll find it on his X feed. It says many are now demanding that Trump act abroad in the way that they think he promised and campaigned, which can be honestly defined as how closely he would parallel their own version of MAGA. So people interpreted Trump and said, this is what he's going to do when it comes to military. Well, Trump's past shows that he never claimed that he was either an ideological isolationist or is he an ideological interventionist? And I think this is where the news media and people that cover Republican politics and people that cover any politician, they think everyone is an ideologue. And one thing you need to know about Trump is he's not an ideologue as usually defined in the world of politics. And Victor Davis Hanson nails it. He never said he was an isolationist, and nor has he claimed to be an interventionist. He has criticized intervention, not necessarily for the intervention itself, but for the way that it was carried out, the inefficiency of it. The criticism of George W. Bush and the Bush family became the incompetence that after 9/11, most Americans agreed that there needed to be something that happened and needed to be something that took place, but it went from a response to 9/11 to 25 years of bloodshed and 25 years of Americans' lives. And so you got to read the Victor Davis Hanson piece. I'll try to retweet it here in just a bit as well. Trump did not like the neoconservatism, according to Victor Davis Hanson, because he never felt it was in our interest to spend blood and treasure on those who either did not deserve the largesse of our blood and treasure or would never evolve in a way that we thought they should, and it was not central to our national interest. So-called optional bad deal, forever wars in the Middle East were something that Donald Trump has always stood up against. However, so people say, oh, he's an isolationist. Well, Victor Davis Hanson says, however, Trump's first-term bombing of ISIS, standing down the little rocket man, warning Putin not to invade Ukraine between 2017 and 2021, killing off Soleimani, and also remember Abu Bakr Baghdadi. He died like a dog. Remember that one? And also the attacking of the Russian Wagner group in Syria. These were certainly not what Victor Davis Hanson refers to as Charles Lindbergh isolationism moments, but sort of a Jacksonian, something summed up perhaps in the don't tread on me type, or no better friend or no worse enemy. So it's a real interesting piece, and I'm watching everybody try to fit Trump. Is he going to side with the isolationist in his party, which, of course, J.D. Vance has had to come out and say, I'm with Donald Trump. There's rumor that there's speculation that maybe there's been a parting of ways or some pushback between he and Tulsi Gabbard, who's very much a non-interventionist, if you will. But Victor Davis Hanson sums it up. And again, you sometimes try to watch Trump, and you watch the media watch Trump, and they're trying to fit all the square pegs into square pegs and all the round hole, and it doesn't work. Trump is not one of those guys. He does not fit into an ideological form of a leader, and he's looking at it situation by situation. And there's been times that he showed that Jacksonian aggressiveness, and there's been times that he's criticized people for long-term intervention. So, interesting piece by Victor Davis Hanson. I saw that Arloa is a big Victor Davis Hanson fan. And if you want to kind of put some parameters and perspective of what is Trump, I even heard a commentator and said Trump is probably worried that all the news media is going about Bibi Netanyahu and the military there, and he just needs to be involved, or he can't make up his mind. And they're trying to spin it as a way of Trump being indecisive. And I think Trump is just looking and watching, And my guess, again, don't have inside scoop, but my guess is Trump is watching, going, I hope that they can take this out. If they can't make sure that we don't have this nuclear threat, maybe we'll give them a little bit of help, and we're going to keep rattling the saber to see if they'll come to the table and see if they'll come talking to us and to surrender and do what they need to do. But if they don't, then can then say, and Victor Davis Hanson points this out, I can then say war was my very last option. And so I don't think the MAGA movement at the end of this is going to be, quote, as divided as what people say. I don't know if it is now. I don't know if you're fighting with your MAGA friends and your Trump supporting friends, but let me know. I just think it's very interesting to see what Victor Davis Hanson says. And it's just, you got to remember who Trump is and how Trump actually approaches things. And you look at his past, he has been critical of long-term interventionism, but he's also been very willing to drop, remember, the mother of all bombs, Moab, on Abu al-Baghdadi, and he's not afraid to do it. So there's a little bit of both sides in Trump, and that is, I think, unusual in politicians, because everybody thinks you have to have an ideological straight line, and Donald Trump is not an ideologue when it comes to most of his topics and concerns in politics. There's a story out of the Independent, which is a UK rag, and I'll just read the headline to you. It's right here in front of me. Trump is losing confidence in Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard as he mulls removing her entire office, according to senior officials. Now, I'm not saying that the Independent is the very best source of information, but it is interesting. Here's what it says. I'll just tell you the story, and you can Pete reportedly finds himself at odds with DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, with one White House official saying he's just been kind of down on her in general of late. The president was recently incensed, according to Politico, because Tulsi Gabbard posted a 3-minute video on X in the early hours of June the 10th, in which she warned that the political elite warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers, placing the world on the brink of nuclear annihilation. Again, let me read the quote that Tulsi Gabbard evidently put out on X on June the 10th. In a video, she said, quote, political elite warmongers are carelessly fomenting tensions between nuclear powers, placing the world on the brink of nuclear annihilation. Trump is said to have been angered by the video and accused Gabbard of going off message and rebuked her for it in person. One of the senior administration officials, quoted anonymously to Politico, said there's a growing perception within the West Wing that the former Hawaii Democratic Congresswoman, who once ran for that party's presidential nomination, doesn't add anything to the conversation. The source to Politico, again, take it with a grain of salt, says, I don't think Trump dislikes Tulsi as a person, but certainly the video made him not super hot on her either, and he doesn't like it when people are off message. They added that many took the video as trying to correct the administration's position, and so the rumors are, there's also a story that President Trump had a summit or a getaway at Camp David just recently, and Tulsi was not invited to that, and it was some of the national security team. Not sure if that's true, but that's the speculation out there. So going to be interesting to see, because again, the Independent and Politico, I'm not saying are the best news sources, but it's a pretty plausible story and a kind of a plausible scenario. Remember, Trump was the one that looked at the media camera. They said, what about Tulsi Gabbard? And his quote was, I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having a weapon. So when she said they ended their proliferation of developing a weapon back in 2000 and 2001, according to her intelligence, he said, I don't care what she says. I think they were very close to a weapon. He's also been considering the idea of closing the entire office and integrating that responsibility into the CIA's leadership infrastructure and just combining departments. So we will see how that goes on. That's according to the Independent. There's a story for you, a little bit of rift in the White House between MAGA, Trump, and the kingdom. And is it also going to be? It's going to be interesting to see what happens to Tulsi. Let's keep going here. I've got a couple of other stories I'll get to. And Jenna Griswold. Anybody heard of Jenna Griswold? She happens to be the Secretary of State for the glorious state of Colorado, where this show usually originates from. I'm in Rwanda, so I'm not there now. But the Department of Justice has stepped in and said, hey, Ms. Griswold, remember that right before the election, we found out that you had leaked some passwords or not secured some passwords to some voting machines here? Well, guess what? The Department of Justice in Washington is wanting to do a little investigation. This is our friend Sherry Pye, who I'll have on next week to talk about this. I'll reach out to her. While Secretary of State Jenna Griswold claims that a recent request for election data by the DOJ is nothing but an attempt to, quote, push their ridiculous disinformation and lies to the American public, legacy media are covering the request. They seem to have forgotten that Griswold had made a heck of a lot of missteps and questionable conduct during her overseeing of elections. A recent NPR report, according to Sherry Pye at Complete Colorado, was republished by Colorado Public Radio, heavily biased in Griswold's favor, called the request an unprecedented amount of election data. It goes on, but in the recent, the Department of Justice has asked for any record to be preserved under Title 52, Section 2070 of the U.S. Code, which covers retention of election records. The Department of Justice is also asking for Jenna Griswold's office to preserve any records relating to the November 2020 election if they are still in her custody. That's going to be an interesting one to watch. Jenna Griswold actually under investigation by the Department of Justice, and she keeps going back to saying they're just trying to spread misinformation, and yet we find out that every time they've claimed somebody's trying to spread misinformation, it's actually them that was spreading misinformation. Even the whole J6 things and all the things have been. Remember the testimony in front of Congress this week? They got that China was printing up and had a plot to print up fake and believable forged mail-in ballots in 2020. So I don't know. The Gabberts out there, the next thing you know, they're spreading misinformation, fake news, all the stuff that she will say. And the next thing she's probably going to refer to someone as a Nazi and a racist and a bigot. It's the whole thing that if they're conspiracy theorists, they always have a name for you anytime you call into question who they are and what they've done. Anyway, good to have all of you here on the program. I'm here in Rwanda, and as you know, I do the Lord's work here. I think it's the Lord's work. It's a promise I made to my son. If you ever want to travel here, love to have you travel here with me live from Rwanda. How many talk show hosts actually do a show from Rwanda? I actually will do a show from Rwanda because, first of all, I love Rwanda. Second of all, I like you guys. Some of you do get on my nerves a little bit, but I want to play a little video. This was out at our school, Legacy Christian Academy. You'll see a lot of dirt on the ground because our construction is by far not finished. We have a couple more. If you start hearing noise, it's rain starting to fall behind me, and so there's a little cloud. I'm looking around thinking someone's throwing something, but it's rain hitting the roof here. Let me show a video. This is out at our school, Legacy Christian Academy, and this is a non-edited video. This is just rough rolled tape, if you will. We haven't made this one fancy or anything, but it gives you perspective not in the classrooms of the kids that you usually see in our school, but these are kids. This is what it looks like without those kids when they're not in school. This is what it looks like when the Legacy Christian Academy in Rivers Promise isn't there. And it kind of explains itself. It's not edited. It's a really rough video, but here we go. Roll the tape. This was me out at Legacy Christian Academy. Seconds, just recording a couple of videos. And while I gather here, this little crowd has gathered around me, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And what you see there is these kids are standing right there, and behind me are a bunch of kids that are in class at our Legacy Christian Academy. You say, Jimmy, why aren't those kids behind you in class? Well, two things. Number one, they don't have sponsors. We have a lot of kids that already go to class that don't have sponsors. These kids will pretty much don't go to school. There's just no option for them to go to school. And so we need more sponsors, and we can help more kids like that. And we also need more space at Legacy Christian Academy. We got to finish up the campus. We got to build more. And so as you hear me talk about sponsorship, you hear me talk about food, you're talking about capital expense and building more buildings. The reason we want to do it is because without us, even though that's too many kids that don't have an opportunity to go to school, every child in this building behind me would be in that exact situation if it weren't for you and your generosity in the work of Rivers Promise. So, hey, sponsor a child. Would you do that? Sponsor a child. The more children you sponsor, take off that list on our website. That's going to give us the ability to add more children into our program and get more kids. These kids right here roaming the streets today, sad as it is. That's a bad thing, and we want to help save them off the streets, and we can do that with education. Sponsor a child. I appreciate you. God bless. There you have it. That's one of the hardest things about going out to the school. And I know producer Chad's been out there with me as well. And one of the hardest things, you have all these kids that do get to go to our school, and then you got a whole bunch of other ones that you're like, if we only had the money, we could help that kid too. If we only had. And one of the worst things you can have when you're dealing in life at all, it's if only statements. And that's one of the problems. And that crowd there continued to grow. I can tell you, we did not make any announcement. The kids of our school did not know it was testing day. They didn't know I was coming because it would distract them from their national test and their performance. So I kind of snuck onto campus, had the word spread that I was coming out there. It would have been a poop show. It would have been crazy. And it would have gone nuts because they kind of liked me out there. So that crowd would have been quadruple. They would have come from ever. But thank you, Arloa. Arloa likes me too. Thank you. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to see, the faces of those kids. And that's one of the heartbreaking things that we do. We bring a lot of hope. We give a lot of happy photos and the kids singing. We played that yesterday in the video. But every time we leave the school, we have a group of kids that are looking at us and saying, what about me? What about me? And can I go to that school? Why can't I go to that school? And there's two reasons. Number one, we're stretched very thin in our budget as is, on the survival mode of funding the school. We have so many kids that attend our school that do not have a sponsor, and we have not kicked them out of school. We're just trying to get them sponsors. But we also are out of space. We need to continue building. So anyway, that's the hardest thing about coming here. It's always a lot of hope, a lot of smiles, a lot of hugs. But that was kind of a behind the scenes photo of what it looks like when you have a lot of kids on the outside looking in, and you're just wishing they could be inside with you. But it's all a matter of the old money. So as the Lord leads you, if he ever does, feel free, riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org, and sponsor a kid, or just give to the general fund and we can take care of more of those kids. But I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective to see the behind the scenes of those are the kids that normally don't show up on the camera because we're focused on the kids. It's a rainstorm out. I don't know if you can see the rain, but that is hitting the ceiling in a quite loud manner. And fortunately, I'm in a covered position. That's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. All right, a couple more news stories to get to. Then we're going to get into with a great conversation with an author. Give me your thoughts on Jenna Griswold. I saw some people making comments on that in the state of Colorado. Said Griswold is now trying to turn all campaign financial reports into private, non-public information so people cannot view any information contained on them. Jim, I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to take your word. I'm just following the story again from afar. I'll get Sherry Python from Complete Colorado on Monday if she can come on and have her explain kind of what's going on. But it seems as if Jenna has nothing to hide, and if her evidence, if the evidence is not on our side, or there's nothing for the Department of Justice, it seems like that Jenna Griswold will say, yeah, here's the documents. Looky here. You're just perpetrating lies and conspiracy theories about 2020 stolen elections. So it seems as if Jenna Griswold is absolutely sure that everything was in the up and up, and she did a great job as the Secretary of State, which I think she's a jackwagon and a buffoon. But if she really did that great of a job, she should be able to release the information. And in releasing the information, she says, see, I told you everything's on the up and up, and Colorado runs very pristine elections. For those of you outside of the state of Colorado, don't forget that prior to Jenna Griswold, and maybe some of you in Colorado don't know this, prior to Jenna Griswold, we've had mostly Republican Secretary of States. Wayne Williams was our last one. Wayne had his faults as well, and they all do. No one's perfect, right? We're not electing our Lord and Savior. We're electing politicians. But Wayne and the previous administrations of the Secretary of State have always used there's a software out there and a platform in which Secretary of States load up their voter databases and they look for duplicates. Because sometimes you move to Texas or you move to Oklahoma or Loa moved to Texas, you probably didn't write the voter department in Colorado and say, unregister me here. You didn't think about that. You just changed you registered in Texas. And so how did Colorado know not to send you a ballot? Yeah, what if you still own the house here? But how do they know where you're voting. Well, there's a software out there, and there's an app, and there's a service that a lot of states, mostly Republican states, actually use that sync up the voter rolls so that, let's see, they say Arloa is in Texas, or you've got Scott in Wyoming, and they're expats from Colorado. They probably didn't call the Secretary of State and say, unregister me. But in the past, we've had the synchronization with the national database. Jenna Griswold actually decided to stop syncing us up with the other states. Jenna Griswold decided we're not going to do that anymore, and that we're not going to see if there's duplicates. We're not going to see if we have someone in Colorado that's also registered in Kansas or Wyoming. We're not going to check it out. That was an act of Jenna Griswold. Jenna Griswold has also been sued, and she lost in court by Judicial Watch because they said Colorado has not cleaned up their voter rolls, and against death. I mean, the death news, who's got a death certificate. I mean, there's all sorts of things that Jenna Griswold has done wrong, and many times when she's been taken to court, she's lost, and it's just important to know. Jenna says it's due to security in the aftermath of the Minnesota politician shooting. Jenna Griswold's afraid that somebody's going to, I don't know, who knows. Jenna Griswold's backpack crazy. And even I think the Democrats in Colorado don't like Jenna Griswold. Jenna Griswold would have loved to run for governor, and she still may give it the old college try. But they put old Weiser out there, the attorney general, very early to try to tell Jenna to stay on the sideline. And then you have Michael Bennett jumping in, and Jenna's going, what about me? What about me? And even I think the leadership of the state Democrat Party are saying, heck no, heck no, heck no. We don't want any part of Jenna Griswold in our party being the president, so being the governor. So anyway, interesting story. Department of Justice is on to Jenna Griswold. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having to talk louder and louder. I'm surrounded by glass. Behind me is a glass wall. I have a glass and metal ceiling above me. And if you remember the song, the Toto song, The Rains in Africa, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm experiencing now are the rains in Africa. And this is not one of the heaviest rains, but it is a pretty heavy rain coming down behind me. And if the audio becomes a problem, you wonder what the background noise, it is. I can barely hear myself speak, which we are getting the crap beat out of us when it comes to the rains right now. I'm just looking around to see. There's some sun on the horizon over there. Yeah, it just kind of blows in an afternoon rain shower today. And what's interesting is in Rwanda, when they have what people say, what is it, summer or winter there? When you're just below the equator, they do have summer and winter. They call them their seasons. But really what you have to be aware of, and again, I cannot hear myself speaking right now. It sounds like a mumble to me. That's how loud it is right now with the rain coming down behind me. And notice the people, if you can see them walking, a lot of folks don't have umbrellas. That's like a luxury. I don't have umbrellas. I usually pack an umbrella with me. I have that, but I can barely hear myself speak. But when you come to Rwanda, you want to find out rainy season or non-rainy season. And this is non-rainy season, but you can see you're getting some pretty big rain here in Rwanda. So we're getting some rain, some pretty decent sized rain. And also, I've come here in rainy season and seen perfect weather. So you have two rainy seasons and two dry seasons here. And right now, in the middle of a dry season, we're actually getting pummeled with a tsunami-type rain. And my prediction is that it will pass by here pretty quickly. Tomorrow, I need this to pass by. Once we leave outside the city to go out to our school, Legacy Christian Academy, once we go out to the school, we can get on some dirt roads, and sometimes they become impassable. Now, if you see this rain, this is one of the reasons I'm pointing this out one more time. We're not in the business of building houses, but we have built houses for widows because we had kids, and we still do have some kids that don't have shelter, proper shelter, and we were giving them school supplies, and they were sleeping under this. They get a rain like this, and again, you're not getting the full mix of it, but it's a pretty hefty little rain going on behind me, and it would be quite fascinating time to watch they're coming to school wet, and they cover themselves with banana leaves and build like a tent of banana leaves, like kids building a fort. And they try to survive these rains under banana leaves. So it's quite a crazy experience, and it is raining like heck right now. And if you can hear me, God bless you, because I can't hear myself. All right, I think he's got a little camera issue going on, but we'll work around it. He looks like he's kind of sideways. Marine, the rain just kind of let up a little bit. I can actually hear myself breathe again. We're live from Rwanda. By the way, if you want to help us out in our charity work here, I'm flying home tomorrow before I bring Michael up. I'm flying home tomorrow from Rwanda. I'll be home Saturday night late. We'll be back in the Colorado studio. There's some thunder. I'll be back in the Colorado studio. I'm kind of halfway outdoors. This is probably not a real bright thing for me to be out here right now, but here we are. I'll be back in the Colorado studio on Monday. There's the rain again. I can't hear, and it'll be exciting. And Monday I'll be back in Colorado. Tomorrow, due to travel, this time I'll be heading out towards the airport, and because of that, we will not have a live show tomorrow. So sorry about that. We'll be back live on Monday from the Colorado studio, but today live from the heart of Rwanda, Kigali, Rwanda. All right, let me bring up my first guest and only guest of the day. He's written a book called From Trauma to Joy. It's life-changing lessons that fellow U.S. Marines taught him after traumatic events occurred in his life. And you don't have to be a Marine or someone in the military that can benefit from these life-changing lessons. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael McNamara is here. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you? You're in Rwanda, man. What is that like? I've never been there. I've been around the world, but I've never been to Rwanda.
Rwanda is beautiful. It is the most amazing country. I'm surprised I'm only here a week. I come here 3 or 4 times a year, and I probably should live here several months, just stay a couple of months a year out here. It's just beautiful, safe. I have a charity organization building a Christian academy, Christian school. My son was adopted from here, so I'm just keeping a promise to all the kids I couldn't adopt. But it's a safe country. It's a beautiful country. And Michael, if you've been around the globe, right over my shoulder over here for the rain, that is actually the Mikoline Hotel, which is known as Hotel Rwanda. That's where the whole actions in the movie took place, right across the street. So it's beautiful. Come with me. That's all I'm saying.
Well, my book is perfect for what you're doing, right? Because what you're trying to do is make the world a better place, and that's what my book's about, right? And so thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm honored to be on with you, man.
Well, let's talk about it. You learned from fellow Marines about the trauma that they experienced and helped you get through some crap in your life. And here you got people here that are still suffering trauma that was genocidal. 1 million people died in 90 days. And there's people watching the show this morning got some trauma. You got people that are going through sickness, going through divorce, going through an addiction. They've got some real trauma, some childhood shit going on in their life. Let's just kind of dive in. Tell us the birth of the book, and then we can dive into the topic of the book.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you framed it the way you framed it, because, I published a book in June is PTSD Awareness Month, right? Well, when you say PTSD, what does everybody think? Oh, that's that combat thing, right? That's that combat thing. Cops get it, firefighters get it. But just because I tended to my mother while she died over the course of 3 years of breast cancer, I don't have that. And the answer to that is we all, I have a saying, nobody gets to the car wash without getting wet, right? And I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan 3 times, all during the height of the fighting. And I tell everybody that's not the worst thing I've ever seen, and everybody thinks it is, right? The worst thing I've ever seen happened to my older sister in our hometown when she told her husband she wanted a divorce. And he killed their 2 kids, shot them both in the head with a 9mm pistol in front of my sister, beat her, and then killed himself. And so what I want people to know is we all go through it in some way, shape, or form. And I tell everybody that trauma shoves us into the valley of the shadow of death, okay? And the difference between us is that we all took a different path down to the bottom of that valley. But there we are together, standing there, looking at each other, right? And the first thing is, we all think we're so unique. Guess what? We're not. The only thing that makes us different is the little trail we took. The way we react to it, which is we tend to isolate ourselves, we numb ourselves, right? A lot of times with alcohol and drugs. A lot of times it's with work. A lot with parenting, with gaming. If you're a younger person, you find a way to numb yourself and take yourself away. For some people, it's fitness, and then and then we fake it. And I'm going to tell you that's a terrible path, but that's the way we tend to do it. And I can tell you, then we go looking for help, and a lot of times we reject that. And so we're in this isolated place, struggling in a big way. And that's the way we tend to do it. And so the way the nation deals with it is we'll medicate you and you can come to therapy forever. And if you look at the data relative to American suicide, it does nothing but go up. So I'm going to tell you, I don't think that path is a great path. It's not a great choice. And I can tell you, really, the epiphany for me was I go to Iraq, I get out of the Marine Corps, I go to Iraq and Afghanistan, I come home from Afghanistan in 2011. I get out and I start a podcast, right, called All Marine Radio, to talk about things Marines would like to talk about. But we have a big suicide problem, right? And so I wanted to talk about mental health issues, but I know Marines won't listen to that, right? So because they're Marines, you can trick them. So that's what I did. I'd say, hey, we're going to talk to Sergeant Major Lakey. He was in the Battle of Fallujah and as a squad leader, and you bring him on. 2/3 of the way through, I'd ask him the same question. What happened when you came home? And Jimmy, I heard a variation of the same story over and over. It started when I was a kid, right? My dad sold cocaine. I got beat up in my home all the time. And I joined the Marine Corps to get out of town. I joined the Marine Corps looking for a better, existence. And I heard that narrative all the time. It was just a different variation. I got married and then my wife left me. I was alone. I was drinking. I was isolated. 3 times I had a pistol on a table in front of me. Once it was in my mouth. And so I took that and I formed a class that I started teaching in 2019. But when I had the guy who ran the Marine Corps on, who was a friend of one of my former commanding officers, and we were talking about suicide. And I said, what can you tell us? He said, well, 80 to 90% of our suicide, because we investigate everyone, they've never left the country, let alone been in combat. And I said, what? And that blew my vacuum tubes, right? Because we all assume that this suicide problem we have, it's all related to operations and combat. And it wasn't. It's related to child abuse and child sexual abuse that comes into the military, into the Marine Corps in particular. And so I didn't know anything about that. I was stunned. And so what I came to realize was our combat operations were going down, our suicide was going up. In about the late 80s, early 90s, the idea of gentle parenting takes foot in the country. And when you teach a kid that there's nothing more important than your feelings in the world, when you lie to him or her about that, and they believe that, because every time at middle school when somebody passed gas wrong, right, they get asked, how did that make you feel? So if you're halfway paying attention, your feelings are the most important things in the world. And then you graduate from high school, and what do you find out? Nobody cares about your feelings. And very few people care about you. And so that collides. So we make more fragile people in the culture, and they start coming in the military after 2010. And so our suicide was related to young people that are more fragile, getting cast into the world. They can't deal with it. So they're killing themselves. And that kind of blew my mind. And so the more I investigated it, the more I found that, it doesn't matter what kind of trauma you have. Okay. And I just took the things I learned. What the book is about is a blueprint. How do you do this? It's not, if you just want to talk about it, and you just want to read some ideas about resilience or whatever, my book's not for you. My book is a blueprint. When you go through terrible things, you can still live a great life. And I say that because I see it all the time in the people that I help. And so this is what you do. The first thing I got told, the truth I got told after I saw somebody get decapitated in a helicopter crash that happened in where we were training in 29 Palms. One of my senior enlisted guys, and we were trying to save the 3 other Marines, and everybody died. He comes up to me, he says, I was a commanding officer. He says, hey, sir, he said, how are you doing? And I said, I don't know. We've been busy. I haven't had time to think about that. And he looked at me and said, you know, you're never going to get over this, right? And I said, what? He said, you'll never get over this. And I can't use the language that I used that day, but I told him, hey, I don't think that's what the therapist says to the patient right about now. So why don't you get away from me? And he looked at me and said, no. I said, who told you that? He said, Vietnam guys. And I tell everybody the single best piece of advice I ever got, I got within 3 hours of seeing one guy decapitated and watching 3 other guys die. And the idea is this: you won't ever get over it. How could you, right? It is so embedded in your brain, you'll never be able to get rid of it. When you struggle, it makes you a normal human being. There's nothing wrong with you, right? Those memories will come back and they're painful. And so you're going to have difficult days, but you can still live a great life. And so that's what the book is about. It's how do you change your behavior? How do you become a better version of you? How do you get out of the valley of the shadow of death, not just take the meds and go to therapy and endure the valley of the shadow of death? How do you transform your life? And so the whole journey from trauma to joy is something that I see all the time. There's 24 stories in the book of people, and I was with one an hour ago who did a little seminar with me. Sexually abused starting at the age of 5. That goes on till she's 13. She runs away from home, and now she's turning 60, and her life is just this unbelievable life because she lives these things. She lives these things. And so it's the idea, Jimmy, of transformation, that you can use your suffering to help somebody else.
If you're listening later, I know some of you are watching this live, but hundreds of you listen throughout the day on the podcast version on the iHeart app, Spotify. If you're listening later, the voice you hear again is Michael F. McNamara. His book is called From Trauma to Joy. And again, Michael F. McNamara is the voice you're hearing. So some of you can see it on the screen, but some of you are not watching it. You're listening to it later in the day. Michael, I heard it said, you mentioned the shadow of death. I heard it said, and it's kind of trite, but it's kind of true. When you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, for God's sake, keep on walking. The problem is we don't know how to walk out of it. We're there. We think the walls have closed in on us. We know it's the valley of shadow of death. And it's nice to say, keep walking. That's what the Bible says, keep walking through it. How do I do that? What is the first thing that people need to do if they feel like they've been walking in that valley for a hell of a long time?
Well, first thing is buy my book. But, and you know, Jimmy, you're pretty smart about this stuff, okay? So as a punk Marine, and I have that punk Marine in me, I'm in the valley of the shadow of death. My parents divorced, they never speak again, right? I go in the Marine Corps, the helicopter crash happens, right? My sister's kids are murdered. I go to war for 3 years. One of my 2 younger sisters freezes to death as a result of alcohol poisoning and cold weather. I get divorced. I could not get away from this stuff. And what the VA offered me was, do you need medication? And you can come to therapy. And I call that the path of endurance, down the long axis of the valley of the shadow of death. You're walking down it, like you said. The punk Marine in me says, screw that. Why don't I turn left or right and walk out of the valley? Why don't I get out of here? And that's what the book is about. It's how do you use your suffering? And you know, you're a Christian. How do you walk in Christ's footsteps? How do you use your suffering to transform somebody else's life? And that's what the book will teach you. So what you do is, A, you're going to have to learn to coexist with it because it's not going away. B, you have to live with self-discipline. If you're a person of faith, right? Live that faith, okay? When you struggle, talk to somebody who loves you and will not judge you about it. You don't need a therapist. You need to talk to somebody. Next, if you struggle, quit drinking, okay? I mean, and I learned this from Marines. Marine, course of action number 1, when we struggle, what do? Let's go soak it in alcohol. That'll help, right? Wrong, right? But that's what we do. And that's what everybody does just about. Fake like you're okay. Don't do that. Quit drinking, okay? Millions of people do it across the planet. Don't tell me you can't. Physical fitness is now half of your brain, half of your body. Get off the couch, walk around the block. You're not a CrossFit athlete. I get it. Get moving. Get out in the fresh air. Look at what you're in beautiful Rwanda, right? Get out. But again, when you're struggling, do those things. And then infrastructure in your life. Marines, we're allergic to the word meditation, so I call it calming my brain down. I calm my brain down. I've learned how to breathe to interrupt anxiety, but for me, it's more anger, right? When I get the FU look at Home Depot, I've been a part of operations where people got killed, right? And that was our job. And when I get that look, that blood starts moving, and I'd be embarrassed to tell you some of the things I did. But now my brain says, take a breath. And I do. And I hold it for a second, and then I spit it out. And I've learned how to interrupt one behavior and trigger a better behavior. So you've got to learn that stuff. So that's the infrastructure thing. And infrastructure is about becoming strong in the valley of the shadow of death, right? You've got to be a better version of you. And you can do that. And then the last piece is you have to learn how to help people. And the woman I was just with says, your life is going to change in such a beautiful way. You won't be able to not help but tell people about it that are struggling. You know, hey, are you okay? Could I talk to you? Right? Let me just tell you some things that have worked for me. And here's the most important thing, Jimmy. You tell them the truth. I don't sugarcoat anything for anybody because they're living it. And when I look at somebody and say, you know, I remember one of the first kids I ever helped. His father committed suicide when he was 9. His brother committed suicide after he joins the Marine Corps. Why? Because his brother was sleeping with his fiance. And when he went home to bury him, he finds that stuff out. So he was drinking himself to death. And the first day I ever met him, he sits down and I was sitting down because he was walking out of my presentation and he got stopped. And he looked at me and he said, does it ever stop hurting? And I said, no, never. He said, the only reason I spoke to you is you're the first person that ever looked me straight in the face and told me the truth. And when you say things like that, you will get people's attention. Time doesn't heal all wounds, okay? God does give you more. People say God doesn't give you more than you can handle. My response, how do you know? Were you in the planning conference when God divvied up misery and said, let's give more to McNamara, he can handle it? Shut up with that stuff. And I know the reason they say it is because they don't know what to say, right? And the words, Christ's words on the cross, Father, forgive them for they know not what they say, right? In his case, what they do. But they don't know what to say, so they spit out something they heard their parents say. Okay, so the truth is really important in the valley of the shadow of death. And when you tell people the truth, you'll get their attention. That opens the door to a conversation that will change their life. And if you'll do it, and if you keep doing it, at some point you're going to get a phone call that sounds like this. Hey, man, do you remember the conversation we had 2 months ago? Yeah, the long one. Yeah. Well, you don't know this, but I was getting ready to kill myself that night. And I just wanted to call and thank you. And good luck sleeping that night, because that is the drug you need, that drug of joy where you help somebody transform their life. And I call that moment the Grinch moment. When the Grinch hears the Who people sing and his heart grows 3 times. That is the most incredible. Can you imagine a woman this morning with me doing a seminar who says that guy made my life go from black and white to Technicolor? I was sexually abused at the age of 5 until I was 13. Yeah, who's the coolest dude in the room right now, Jimmy? Me. But again, you could be cool like me too. All you've got to do is walk this path, and anybody can walk it. And so if you've gone through traumatic experiences, my message to you is there's an answer. It's inside of you. You can unlock it. You can embrace it. And it applies to all of us who don't have a serious mental illness. We're not bipolar. We're not schizophrenic. We don't have personality disorder. That's 95.5% of the population. We can do this. You don't need to get on the meds and go to forever therapy. So that's the message of the book.
The name of the book again, I'll say it again for you. It's called From Trauma to Joy by Michael F. McNamara. That's the voice you're hearing. Michael, we'll follow up here. A couple more questions for you. A lot of these are lessons that fellow Marines taught you. Kind of talk about that. You mentioned the guy that kind of taught you a lesson the hard way just a couple of hours after you watched some pretty traumatic stuff. Talk about how those fellow Marines taught you some of these lessons.
Well, it's funny because the initial content of what I taught was just the things they told me over and over again. You're not going to get over it, right? other things, right? A therapist will look at you and say, well, I think you should really consider, the way you use alcohol. That's not what I say. What I say is stop drinking, stupid, right? You want to make it worse? Go ahead, jump into a half a bottle of tequila, watch what happens. And so it's all these simple truths, right? Right? Be physically active. It's good for your brain, right? Talk about it. Don't fake it. I learned that trauma is trauma is trauma, right? Gail was sexually abused. My path is different. I would say, Jimmy, you have stuff in your life that's different. So it was all these little things. But the most important lesson I learned. So I learned all this stuff, and I'm putting this class together, and it's all my stuff, right? Which is pretty nerve wracking. And then this woman who lives in Huntsville, Alabama, her name is Libby Weichel. She sends me a letter from a grateful mother, and I helped her son. And I told Libby, you don't have to thank me. I've seen him fight. Maybe not him personally, but I've seen them fight. The most courageous and selfless things I've ever seen are young Marines who give their lives for each other and people they don't even know. And she emailed me back and she says, yeah, you don't get it. I know you don't. And I was like, what? She said, I used to lay in this bed and was terrified my son would kill himself. I used to pray to God every night, please God, right? She said, my husband couldn't reach our son, right? His little brother would be over there when they'd be drinking and the guns would come out, right? His fiance was watching it, her family watching it. You don't realize what you did. And I didn't. And so this whole idea of transformation, and the first week I ever presented these ideas, this guy comes up to me and he says, you're obviously a big Viktor Frankl guy. And I said, who's that? He said, Viktor Frankl. I said, I heard you the first time. Is he a Russian hockey player? The Red Wings got a bunch of those guys. Does he play for them? And he said, you don't know who Viktor Frankl is? And I said, you're kind of dancing near the edge. Does that make me stupid? And he said, where did this idea of giving and transformation come from? I said, Libby Weichel in Huntsville, Alabama. And he looked at me and goes, so you came to this conclusion on your own? And I said, oh, I think I just got kind of smart, didn't I? And he said, well, I would say that, but you're not wrong. And so, Jimmy, everything I learned from those interviews. Now, since then, I know who Viktor Frankl is. I know, who all these other people are who embrace this idea. And Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning after he went through the concentration camps of World War II and his entire family's murdered. And he went down the same path. I get asked all the time when I present things. It's funny. Are you a friend of Bill? And I would say, Bill who? And they say, never mind. And I'm at the Naval Academy speaking, and I come out of a dinner, and this senior chief and his wife are waiting for me. Could we talk to you? Yeah. And she asked me, are you a friend of Bill? And I said, no, but who is this guy Bill? I get asked about him all the time. She said, he started Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's so many parallels between the things you say and the Alcoholics Anonymous program. It's amazing. I was sure. And he looked at me and said, she was positive. You were a recovering alcoholic. I said, I'm not a drinker because it caused too much pain in my family. I've never cracked the big book, and I've never been to a meeting. Maybe we stumbled down the same path of transformation as Frankl learned, and maybe you can do this. And so that's what I learned from those guys.
The name of the book is called From Trauma to Joy, Michael F. McNamara. Michael, if somebody wants a copy of the book, they want to follow you, your work, where do they go?
Go to Amazon.com and you can find it there. There's a couple sizes of the book. Buy the big ones because there's 160 images in there. And I'm big on you being able to visualize this. There's 24 different stories in there of people just like you, right? And you'll see and so the conclusion I want you to reach is the truth. If they can do it, you can do it. Okay. And then if you'll Google From Trauma to Joy, or the other phrase is post-traumatic winning. Marine, what do you mean? We can't win in the Valley of the Shadow of Death? Oh, hell no. We've won on Iwo Jima. We win wherever we go. It's our job to win in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And I'm very proud to say my Marine culture helped contribute to this idea of victory over trauma. And so, yeah, that's how you can find me.
From Trauma to Joy, look it up on Amazon. Michael F. McNamara. Michael, God bless you, my friend. Good to talk to you. I enjoy the conversation. Look forward to looking at the book. Michael F. McNamara. Hey, very quickly, it's raining. It's been crazy. Somebody posted my voice was too low. I think that's because I couldn't even hear myself talk, so who knows what my volume was. It keeps ebbing and flowing. Everybody's singing the Toto song, Rains Down in Africa. Hey, very quickly, my friends, I want to remind you, if I could remind you that Sherry Creed is somebody that would love to help you with your home and your real estate transaction. Talking about a Marine there, talking about military. Sherry has an affinity, knowing for the pain, the suffering, and the misery, and the determination that people have often gone through in the military. She will discount part of her commissions to make sure you just have a better opportunity and to save you some money when it comes to buying that home. Sherry's very committed to first responders and veterans and people that are active duty. So talk to her. She's also just a fantastic person when it comes to, even once you close the house of the transaction, she takes a portion of her proceeds and donates it to the charity of your choice. If you're contemplating a buying or a selling, I want you to reach out to Sherry Free, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Maybe you're trying to sell. You want to move to Rwanda. You want to get out of Colorado for whatever reason. Maybe Jenna Griswold's driven you nuts and you got to get out of town. Homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Reach out to her and have that conversation. And again, I think she's kind of a different kind of realtor. You ever read the ninja sales technique? She kind of puts those in play when it comes to real estate. And she just looks at every transaction as if this could be setting you up for generational wealth. If we do this transaction right, this could set you up for your kids and your grandkids to have an inheritance they didn't even dream of. Listen, homeswithsherry.com. Our friend, my friend, homeswithsherry.com. Reach out to her if you're in Fort Collins, if you're in Boulder, if you're in Denver, if you're in Broomfield, if you're in Firestone, if you're in Erie, all of you on the I-25 corridor, you know what I'm talking about. You know the towns I'm talking about. If you're out of state, come on to Colorado, call Sherry, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. You want to get out of Aurora, homeswithsherry.com, and reach out. Make sure you tell her that Jimmy Lakey's talking about her on the program, homeswithsherry.com. All right. Everybody liked that interview, huh? And Roger says that was a powerful interview. Thanks for having that. Rich says great testimony, and Jim says great guest. Producer Chad, if we get the time, maybe we could take that interview all by itself and spin it out there. That way people can share it, like it if we have some time today. If not, we'll do it another time. But that may be a great interview to kind of spin out on its own on the podcast platforms. And again, from trauma to joy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to play Mean Roulette on the program. If you can hear me, I know somebody said it was quiet. That's probably a lot of background noise. I apologize for that. It is a rainstorm. It hasn't really rained except a small shower yesterday. I'm hoping it stops raining because I have dinner plans here in just a bit of a place I want to go, and I need it to not be raining too. Yeah, it's kind of harder to move around the town here, the city, when it's raining like this. So we'll see if the rain passes. All right, let's do this. Mean Roulette, we like to play this. Again, no show tomorrow. I'll be traveling, boarding a plane. Right now, I won't be boarding a plane yet, but I will be headed towards the airport, not at the airport, getting ready to board my flight. And that's coming up tomorrow. So we won't have a show tomorrow. Back in the Colorado studio on Monday. All right, here we go. Let's do it. It's Meme Roulette time on the show. I got a couple of memes. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Meme number one, slow on my computer. Oh, there's Elon Omar. Elon declares America is one of the worst countries in the world. So why hasn't she returned to her Somalian utopia? Fantastic question, isn't it? All of these people protesting what an awful country is while they wave the Mexican flag. Why don't they go live in the Mexican utopia? And Elon, your Somalian utopia awaits you. And show to your cousins and your brothers. I'm sure they'd love to intermingle with you. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Meme number 2 of the day is... it looks like, for those who are listening and not watching, it looks like the Burger King logo, but instead of Burger King, it says Burger Democratically Elected Leader. And this is, it looks like maybe a Babylon Bee. In solidarity with protesters, Burger King changes name to Burger Democratically Elected Leader. That was not going to translate for those who listen to the podcast only. If you're looking at it, now you get it. That's a Babylon Bee right there. I always love the Babylon Bee. Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Let's see where we steal this meme from. Another Babylon Bee. Canada continues the time-honored tradition of being the worst, being worse than USA in everything. Hockey, etc. Yeah, Canadians, you're doing great. Keep it up. Time-honored tradition of sucking and being worse than America. Other than that, you're good people. You're great. Okay? That's what you say. A is a Canadian. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Breaking news: a federal judge in San Francisco has ordered Israel to rebuild Iran's nuclear plants. That seems about apropos. Apropos it is. All right, one more meme. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. 77,300,000 showed up for No Queen's Day on November the 5th, 2024. Kamala Harris. 77 million people showed up for No Queen's Day. I'm telling you. You know, by the way, I think they're saying No King's Day, which we don't have a king. But I guess you're saying that Donald Trump's the king. Well, I guess they've maybe learned a little bit of lesson that he's not a Nazi, and that didn't work. So now they're trying to say he's an emperor or king. The name calling continues, and it's not based on a lot of facts. By the way, I got one more question. We'll pick up on the topic next week. We'll do this. Quick question for you. Ready? How's Pride Month going for you? You guys been celebrating your Pride Month? Pride Month's been happy for everybody? Maybe it's because I'm in Africa, or maybe it's because of the election. Has the Pride fervor, and again, I've been traveling so much, maybe I'm wrong. My perception is we're not having Pride and Rainbow Skittles shoved down our throat as much as we usually were. Am I accurate in that? It seems as if we're not getting as much crap about Pride. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll talk about that next week. Is Pride has the fervor of Pride? It almost like everyone had the virtue signal about Pride. Remember, Target was dressing their mannequins up as transgenders, putting bulges in women's pants, and all sorts of weird whatever they were doing. Well, I'm just asking. From my estimation, just watching online, I'm not seeing as much Pride crap. And if you want to have Pride or whatever, you do whatever the hell you want to do. But you don't have to shove your Rainbow Skittles down my throat. Thank you very much. So anyway, just an observation is Pride Week or Pride Month or whatever we have. I don't know why we have to have the whole month of it. Celebrate a day. Or what, veterans get one day. I think the LGBTQ, RST, VUX interview community, you can deal with one day or half a day. If the veterans only get one day, I don't need to give you a whole day a month, right? It's just me. But anyway, I just noticed that today. Maybe it's because I'm out of the country. It doesn't seem to be as obnoxious as it used to be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you one more time. And the kids tomorrow, we're going to head out to Legacy Christian Academy, and we're throwing a big meal. We'll feed all the kids a really great meal tomorrow, which is a big deal. I mean, food is huge here because foods are oftentimes a shortage. When kids aren't at our school, they don't eat. Say it again. Those kids that you saw in that video earlier, they're not eating. Most of them will maybe have one meal a day, maybe one meal a week. I mean, and when I say a meal, I'm talking about they found a potato and they're munching on that. So tomorrow we're going to have our kindergarten graduation for our kindergarten. We're going to feed the kids. We're going to have a fantastic time. It's going to be a great time of watching seeing the kids graduate back in Legacy Christian Academy. If you'd like to donate at riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org. Still time to get it here and to make a huge, huge difference. We really appreciate all of your participation. And I know not everybody's a bazillion-dollar donor, but you need to know that nickels and dimes and 20s and 30s make a difference as well. But those of you who can understand that big donations are always welcome as well, and they're very helpful. Again, the reason we saw those kids earlier is because they're on the outside looking in, and we can't help them. We don't have sponsors for them, and we don't have buildings for them. And until we do, then those kids will stay on the outside looking in. So everything you give, whether it's a child sponsorship, a food donation, as far as money, general fund, whatever you do, it's going to help us take care of the kids that are in school, add more in, and eventually have to build more buildings. So for all of you, riverspromise.org is a great way to make a donation, riverspromise.com, or reach out to us, info@JimmyLakey. If you'd like to sponsor this show as well, info@JimmyLakey.com, info@JimmyLakey.com. And don't forget Sherry Cree, reach out to her. All right, got to wrap this dog and pony show up. We have done all the damage that we can do here today, and I cannot even hear myself think because of the rain. If you'd like more information about what we do here in Africa, info at Rivers Promise, info at Jimmy Lakey. Glad to answer any questions. Make a donation. I'd appreciate you doing that. Hey, the next time, the good Lord willing, that I appear on this television camera for you is going to be Monday, and I will be back in the Colorado studio. And yeah, Rachel just said Pride Month has been less than a week. I wonder if that's the result of the election. I really think that may be the result of the election, where the polling number shows that. Jim says, is it true that the cats in Pride will eat you in Africa? Yeah, if you're out in the Akagera National Park and you see the cats, there's a reason they don't ever allow you out of a safari vehicle. There's a place midway in the national park where you can stop for a toilet break, but it's surrounded by cables with electrical shock, and there's a lot of things besides cats that'll kill you. They'll get you. Yeah, cats are in Pride, though. The pride of cats. I see what you did there, Jim. Creative. Good play on words. God bless you. God bless America. Hey, God bless Rwanda as well. See you back in America Monday. Peace. I'm out of here.